So, hello everyone, and welcome to our first ever hybrid presentation. It's an experiment that we are trying to run today. So, the presentation is all about all data tells a story, but are we listening? So, let's dive in. Uh, there you go. That's what we are experimenting with. That's right. So, let's dive in. Okay. So hello everyone. Please bear in mind these are hand-drawn slides for me. So that's how I'm going to start here. Hello, I am Ruchi. I am the Agile Delivery Lead at Sky Betting and Gaming in the Gaming Tribe. And what do I do and how do I perform and what I'm going to do with the squads and stuff. This is what I'm going to narrate with a small story in front of all of you. So hello everyone. The story that I'm going to talk today might be something that you have heard quite a lot of times in motivational talks and stuff, but this is what I'm going to reiterate and make sure how it fits in the delivery space. So the story goes here something like this. So there was once a small girl who was walking along the shores across the ocean where she was throwing small little objects from the shore into the sea. Looking at her, there was an old man across the shore who was actually quite inquisitive about what that little girl is doing. So what did he try to do? He tried to come towards the girl and ask her, "Hello, what are you trying to do here?" So as and when he approached the little girl, he realized she was throwing away starfish into the sea. Why do you think that happened? So the little girl paused and replied, well, tomorrow the tides of the shore are going to go back and the starfish may die if they are left on the shore. So I'm just making sure I pick them up and throw them off in the ocean. To which it was a surprise to the man, to which he replied, "You know what? The shore is miles and miles away, and there are millions and millions of starfish across. How are you even going to make a difference?" Well, to which politely the little girl replied, "It makes a difference to this starfish," as she tossed that starfish into the ocean. So this is exactly what I would like to talk about today is every little thing we do make a difference, but it is up to us how we want to make that difference. So in terms of the delivery space, all I can talk about is we are not directly involved or impact the business, but however, we are here to support and indirectly impact every little thing and action we do in the delivery space. That is what is my role in SBG, creating an impact in the delivery, making sure we have our products and our services delivered in the most efficient way. So that is about my role explained in the starfish analogy. But hang on, you would be thinking, is that story even relevant? Right, let's see. Who do you think that old man would be? And who do you think the little girl would be? Have you ever thought about this? You know, who the starfish would be? What impact the starfish has? So let me just give you a nice analogy out here is the old man out here could be anybody in the business. It could be your stakeholders. It could be no direct involvement in the squad, in the team, but at a very high level, they would be thinking, what's happening with the squad? What's happening with that particular tribe? You know, why things are going the way they should? And it's only after the old man has the conversation with the girl. So the girl here is maybe someone in a role like me who is involved day to day within the squads and who are there out in the squads who are rolling their sleeves up and trying to mend ways, adapt, and make sure we have informed decisions. So without having that conversation between the old man and the little girl, things might never be properly understood as to why she's throwing away the starfish and why he's asking those questions. So all I want to say here is communication plays a vital role in understanding what people do at the team level and how it is perceived at the management or leadership level. It is really important for all of us to understand these. And about starfish, well, I leave it open to you to understand what are the impacts, what are the starfish in your organization that you could make an impact to. So that is about what my role is and at the delivery space in Sky Betting and Gaming. Moving on further, all I would like to ask is, what is data? Can anybody in the audience tell us what is data? Anybody? Anyone out here want to say just what is data? So let me just give you a quick brief. So that point you see on the slide there is something, a data. It's a collection of information. So do you think that point on the slide makes any difference to anyone? Well, not really to me, because that point holds no value until you see a trend. So data, when collected over a period of time, it becomes a trend, as you see out there. But is that trend of any use to us? Well, definitely, if you understand the context behind the trend. So once you understand what's happening and the context behind that trend, there you go. You make decisions. You communicate with people. You have that conversation so that people in the squad, outside the squad, in the leadership, everybody understands how we can make use of the data to make changes, adapt, and improve our ways of working. So it is all about how we act, how we measure, and how we use data at Sky Betting and Gaming. So this is what is the brief idea of what you're going to talk today. So hope you guys enjoy it. And moving further, I would like to hand over to my colleague, Dave, for further introduction on Tableau and how we measure data. Dave.
Hello. My work in technology's got me. So I'm Agile Performance Lead, and my role is looking at how we perform as a business, and the main part of that is how we perform as tribes and then the teams underneath. My mum always says to me, if you look after the pennies, the pounds look after themselves, which is a very old saying, but I think it works well here. The pennies are the teams, and the tribes and the business are the pounds. So what we're going to talk about today, I'll touch on the tribes and the business quickly, but then we're going to dig into the teams and the stuff that Rush has been doing over the last year while she's been working here. So a quick history, we've been running KPI reporting since 2014. We've tracked 315 teams through our reporting over that period, of which 142 of them still exist today, and we're tracking day to day. We've got all the data going back to 2019, so we've got all the teams that have, any that have been archived, and any of their statuses that have been archived off, even on existing teams that are running now. We track all that data so we can get proper trends across it. We cover 4 main areas with the Tableau reporting. Data quality, that's the foundation of everything that we do. Without that, we wouldn't believe the metrics we're seeing, and we have to be on top of that day in and day out. KPIs, we're going to talk about that in some depth today as well. This is top-level trends, deep diving into workflows and things like tickets. We also track large initiatives with burn-ups and velocity reporting, and we do financial reporting as well. So we've actually turned Jira into a large timesheet, which is loved by some and not loved by others, but it's actually a sidebar to the reporting that we're doing. All the reporting we do was set up originally by me, just so I could understand the teams I was working on. So that's the foundation of it, and that's what we've built on top of. So, let me go back in. Back to the start, it is. Sorry, getting a bit eager with the clicking. So, things we do differently that I've not seen in a lot of businesses is we use Jira, which is used in a lot of businesses, and Jira, the basic form is a ticketing system. You define a workflow, you move the tickets through that workflow. But what we've done is we've actually, those statuses, we've agreed within the teams whether a status is progressing or dwelling. What that allows us to do is we can track the amount of time a ticket sits in a status, and then we know whether it's effort or dwell. And there's a lot of power in understanding whether something's effort or dwell. An example of that is if you want to speed cycle time up on a team, it's a lot easier to hit the dwell points than it is to hit the effort points where people are doing the work. You'll try and tell an engineering team to work twice as fast. You'll soon be told that they're not going to do that. But if you actually look at someone that's dwelling and you try and actually get them through that dwell status faster, then that's a good way of speeding cycle time. So we track both progressing and dwelling. And the other thing we do as well is we uniquely track for each team what their class as cycle statuses. Some teams want ELAB and analysis as part of their cycle. Other teams don't. If that's done kind of offline, they might not want to bring that in. They might want to really focus on the team's part of the work. So we're not restricting the teams in any way. We can actually track all the statuses they want to track. Interesting points that have come up over the years, UAT in is interesting. Here it's progressing. But if you've got a third-party team doing the actual UAT itself, then it'd be dwelling. And the other thing that's interesting here, this team, when it's set up its statuses, they've got dwell points between each progressing point, so we'll get to the end of the board. Once they actually deploy in, then it just goes through 3 progressing statuses. I'd be very tempted to, in my world, I'd have a dwell status before UAT in, especially if it's a third party. I'd want to review that data. I'd want to know if we had an agreement with the third party, how long it'll take to review something, then that data is useful to us. So I'd only want to move it into UAT in exactly at the point where they start doing the review and move it back out once they've finished. That data is useful and interesting to us. So enough slides. I'm going to move on to looking at some of the reporting. Just have a quick drink. So I mentioned before data quality. That is the foundation of everything we do. And sometimes we struggle in the business to get the data quality right. So what we've done is, because a lot of the things we're doing, it can be a little bit invisible to the teams, things like the linking of things to big initiatives, whether tickets are being sat in the right statuses for the right amount of time. It's all a little bit hard to see sometimes when you're filtering the board with sprint filters and you've got swim lanes all over the place. So with 2 dashboards that help the ADLs or project managers spot whether something needs looking at. So this dashboard only looks at any ticket that's had effort applied to it in the last 3 weeks, or any epics that are above those tickets. So we can see, I can see these tickets here. There's 2 that are sat in eLab in, and they've been there for between 70 and 80 hours. I'd be interested as a project manager or ADL to review that and have a look and make sure they're in the right status. Everything else is quite short, so it's probably fine. It's probably moving through the board. But it's just a review point. Do we want to have a look at these? And there's no right or wrong answer here. Something could have been there for 200 hours, and it might be the right thing. Only the person working close to the team will know that. So I think that's the key thing here. I can come in and have a look at this from outside, and I can say that looks a bit weird, it's interesting, but only somebody working closely to the team that understands the team day in and day out can make a decision, is that right? The other stuff we can spot is how many people have been assigned to this work. I can see that one person at the top's got 4 tickets assigned at the moment. Looks like they're doing code reviews on 4 tickets. That might be fine. It looks like they might review them all at the same time, which is okay. I can see down here, I've got 3 epics that aren't actually under big parent initiatives. It's something we try and do. We get everything that we've got up through the hierarchy up to a parent initiative. So these all need parent-child links putting on them and deciding where they're going to go. We can also see there's a ticket missing a CapEx tag for our finance reporting, and we've got one that's missing a class of service tag as well. It's the same ticket. So we need to tidy that up. If we look at this once a week, we can tidy up all the stuff that's going through the board, and we can make sure we're on top of it. The other view we have as well is, because this is mainly the progressing work, we can also look at tickets that are sat in cycling statuses. So we see all the tickets here for this team that are in a cycling status. The interesting one is this top one. He started cycling back mid-August, and since probably early September, it's sat in test done. I'd want to review that. It's worth looking at because it could have got a little bit lost, so let's tidy it up. Again, it's easy for tickets to get lost with all the filters that we have in place, but it just helps us spot that. Keep on top of those 2 dashboards, and data quality is good. So that's the main thing we're looking at. So next up, KPIs. This is where we're going to focus most of our time. So we'll talk about team KPIs in a moment, but what I actually track for the business for Flutter is the actual SBG KPIs. So we can use the same set of KPIs across either SBG, across the tribes, or across the individual teams. And it's that looking after the pennies and the pounds looking after themselves is what we're driving here. Here's a set of the standard KPIs we track. The top 6 are the main ones, and they all work hand in hand with each other. If you see one of these trending down, you can normally use one of the others to give you an idea of why it's trending in that direction. We can see we've got a slight trend down on tickets completed at the moment, and that's because we've had a heavy holiday period over the last few weeks, well, the last couple of months really. And we can see assigned people is going down as well. Hopefully we'll start seeing that come back up now. But the idea here is we can use this, we can see what's happening, we can try and get an idea from this before we dig further into the data, exactly what's happening. If redo is going up, so a redo is when a ticket revisits statuses it's already been through. If we actually see redo going up, we might expect that cycle time could start increasing because tickets aren't getting off the board as quickly as we want. They're coming back multiple times, so they're taking longer to cycle. So cycle time going up might be redo going up as well. So we can use these to help understand all the different areas. So at business level, what I use these for is to look for the spikes and to understand what's driving those spikes. We can see here there's a spike in tickets completed back in May. The next tab along allows me to look at a tribe level, what's happening over this data. I can see here the infrastructure has driven, there's a spike in infrastructure at the same time of tickets completed. I can then go further, I can select infrastructure, you bear with me. I can select the infrastructure tribe, and I can then dig down into the teams and infrastructure and find out what's been happening there. I can actually click it for things on the board. You don't think about this when you're putting a presentation together. Believe me, I can select teams and you'll be able to see the teams. Sorry, I've got an overlay over the top that's causing me a few problems. Here we go. Right, there we go. So now I can see all the teams in infrastructure. These are the teams, and I can see there's one team here. It's in platform. So platform released a lot of tickets on that week. I would go to the owner of that project on platform and I would check why we released so many tickets on that week. And I could then feed back to Flutter what's happened there. So we've got a set of KPIs that work across the business and then across tribes and then across individual teams as well. So I know Rushi in the gaming tribe, you actually do some metrics. You use this reporting at the tribe level once every month?
Yeah. So I'd like to just talk about a little bit of brief info on the KPIs report. Yeah. So as a part of the role of my ADL out here and for the leadership team, in order to support me, what we do is we go through the monthly metrics report using this KPI report, what you see right in front. So this report is just for the squad level, at my level, to help and understand at the leadership level what is happening within the squad, the context behind how the work is progressing, how the workflow is designed. If there is any challenges the squad feels at any point in time, that's when we shout out to the leadership. And I'm really thankful for all the leadership we have in terms of, gaming level, the tribe level, at the squad level, that they're so supportive in trying to help us pave the path for us in order to see where we are heading to and how we need to mend our ways using these reports. So we have this session monthly wherein I, as an ADL, present the performance of my squad, wherein we have our head of delivery, Chris, who's sitting right here, and our head of engineering, Chris, as well here. So along with the other heads of other functions, wherein we discuss and talk about what's actually happening in the context of that specific squad, wherein I am leading the delivery. So this is the KPI report that we use, and this is where, if you see any highs, if you see any lows, that's where you try to have a conversation. Nobody asks you why has there been an outlier, which is a low, what have you done, or it's not a conversation about it. However, it's a very positive conversation wherein they try and help and support me in order to understand what has gone, what has happened with the SWOT. Is there anything we can try and help you so that we can help with the performance? So I'm very lucky in terms of the leadership support that I get. So this is where we try and make sure that monthly we try and discuss what's happening at the squad level and communicate the same kind of idea what happens at the squad level to the leadership level, and we are all in track and on the same page. So yeah, over to you, Dave.
So normally what will happen is I have ADLs contact me and ask if I can support them reviewing their metrics. So it's just another pair of eyes really going over the top of it. So that helps them. I poke holes in some of the metrics, they'll answer what's happened. And we decided the best way of doing this was if I poke some holes and ask some questions about the .star team where Rushi works. So we've run through this, so we know there's nothing going to trip us up, I think. So when I started looking, here's a standard set of metrics that you've just seen. This is just for one team. It's for the DOS team in gaming. So when I started looking through this, the interesting thing that stood out to me straight away is April looks like something happens. Something happens in April. Everything drops away. We can see here the story points drop away, number of tickets drop away. And then I think Rushi's answer is going to be, we can also see assigned people drop away as well. So Rushi, you've got any thoughts on this drop?
Right. Yeah. Thank you, Dave. So here is the conversation that I have with people who can see those but have no context about what's actually happening in the sport. So if I would like to point out what has happened in that particular period of time where you see between 15th of March and 12th of April. So something has happened during that point in time wherein you can see the outlier of the highs directly into the lows. What do you think might have happened? So nobody outside the squad actually knows the context. So it is people who work in the squad who can actually let the people outside know. So that is the period when we lost about 3 contracted engineers and 1 tester. So you can see the impact right there on losing our people in the squad creates. So that is exactly what has happened. So unless and until you have a conversation, you don't know what's happening in the squad. Whilst you see the impact of the people leaving the squad out here, we are low on numbers on the squad capacity. You can actually see the number of assigned people has gone low as well because there are less number of people working on the tickets. So one data has an impact on the other as well because they all work in line. Also, at the same time, if you see a peak in the March, that is not because all of the squad, and it's just because of one specific ticket that we will be talking about in the story points. But this is the context behind why the highs and why the lows has happened and made a drastic impact on that metrics from the first KPIs.
So from my standpoint, the positive is I can see a definite recovery. If we look here, we drop away and then we can see a recovery over time, which is great. So there are other interesting points in this cycle time. So we can actually, I know there's been a big push for cycle time. So we've got multiple reports that sit under these key ones, which help us then dig further into what's been happening. So this is what we class as phase cycle time. What it does is it shows us for each month for the team, the average cycle time, but then also that broken down with the average time that tickets sit in each of the statuses. And it's these workflow statuses that are important. So do you want to go through this stuff, Rushi?
Yeah, definitely. So looking at that particular data set, could you notice any kind of outlier out there? Anybody in the audience? Do you notice any kind of outlier there?
Impact.
Definitely, yeah. So there is one thing, if you look at the gray circles out here, so what we try to analyze with respect to cycle time is you can't, as Dave mentioned, you can't make the engineers go fast. Looking at the analogy of the printer, you can, as many papers as you want to dump into the printer, it's fine, but it can only print 1 paper at a time. Keeping the same ideology in mind, you can't make people go faster. They can only do as much as in a particular period of time. However, the magic that you can do is making sure the dwell stages and improving the performance on the waiting areas in the team's workflow. So if you consider a team's workflow as a system, wherein, if you try and put forward the idea of systems thinking in the workflow management, what you see is the waiting stages are the part and parcel of the squad's working where things can be improved in terms of delivery. So what you see here in the gray bits is imp out. So what that means for my squad is anything that has finished development coding from the developers goes into that buffer of imp out, and it is waiting as a buffer for the testers to pick stuff in order to test. Why do you think it is more in the month of January, February, March? And what has happened is it has reduced. So 2 things I would like to say here is, first thing is January, just out of Christmas, and you get to see people are on holidays, and there's loads of stuff affecting the capacity of the squad. So that's where you see there's quite a lot of churn in the first 3 months. However, keeping that in mind, we just had 2 testers we had 20 people in our squad, and we just had 2 testers out there. So you can see what is impacting the systems thinking mindset is there is so much of input coming on to from the developer, and the testing capacity, you can see the buffer, which is constrained. So things are waiting for people to be picked up into test, and you can't let the testers move faster because, as I said, you cannot make people work faster. However, if you want to improve the efficiency, what you could do is, in the month of April, we lost 4 people in our squad who were the contractors, which means the number of tickets that were churned from the coding were low, and the testing improved because we had 2 people in the squad out there. So making sure the input and the output, which is the demand and supply, meets itself is where you see the impact in the month of April. So the testing and the development went hand in hand because we had less churn of the impacts on the development team. That's why you see the April. But what happened from June? The impulse stages reduced. That's because there's one more tester introduced in the system, which means that as much as you can try and churn out, there's also people who are immediately picking up and improving the testing part of it as well. So now you see it works as a system and reducing the dwelling time and improving the progress time. This is exactly what we want to try in improving the delivery. It's not about how much people can pick up. It is about how quickly we can reduce the waiting times. So that's about the impact.
So I think, obviously, we can't always throw more tests at something, but if we start seeing that we're queuing work up for tests, then we can consider getting the engineers to actually be actively involved in test. We can get testers writing test cases. I know engineers love doing a bit of testing, not. So there are other options as well. We could make one of the engineers maybe the support person for the week and stop them pushing more work through into test. We've got various options, but the key thing here is to understand that just because you make one part of a workflow faster doesn't mean you're going to make the entire workflow faster. You may just pass a problem onto a different part of the workflow. And it's important that we can spot that within the teams. We understand the workflow, we understand any changes we make and the impact it has to that workflow. So that's what we're trying to do with this phase cycle time. The next thing I asked Rushi, he stands out quite a mile. I asked about May and what happened in May.
So what happened in May? Why do you see that big chunk of orange out there? So something interesting definitely happened. So people outside, definitely they have no idea, but me being me. So what happened in our squad, only the squad people know. But again, having conversation is important. So May was a major chunk of deliverable which had to be rolled back. And that is the impact you see. Why? Because elab out is something wherein you finish the analysis phase, which is the elaboration, and tickets wait there for the dev to be picked up for development. So what happened during this time in May is when we had to do a major rollback of our deliverable, what we figured out as a team is we will work towards fixing that particular release instead of taking anything else in the system. So it's like creating a bottleneck. Unless and until in a pipe, if you kind of release or remove that impediment, that's when the water flows into the pipe. So that was exactly what was happening out there. What we as a squad tried to do is everything that the squad was working on, we just made sure it's all standstill, nothing moves out. All we do is try and fix the release, which was really important at that particular point in time. And that is why you see everything was pushed out before dev, which sits in the analysis phase for the whole period of time, and whilst the team was working on something else which was more important. So why things are sitting at that stage is only understood by the team, but unless they've asked me and we have this conversation and the monthly metrics are reviewed with the leadership team, people are not aware what's actually happening at the squad level. So this is the context behind what goes behind those metrics and how we measure and how we use it to drive the decisions. And when we see something like this happening, the leadership offers support just in time as and when needed, and how we can improve our processes and how we can make sure we have the lessons learned so that once the release has been rolled back, it has been affected in the system, what is the thing that we can do next time so that the same thing doesn't happen again? So again, adapt and learn is what we try and do.
Yeah.
Anything else on this, Dave?
No, the thing we spotted, obviously, cycle time drops away quite nicely, apart from the one blip. And what Rushi doesn't mention is she took over the team in January, so I'll put that out there. So I think there's some of Rushi involved in actually improving this team quite a lot, which is great.
No, definitely. It's the squad who owns it and the squad who has done it. I just do nothing.
So the next thing I spotted, and we've had quite a bit of a discussion around redo. So redo is when a ticket comes back into into any status multiple times. And we've talked about this, and I know Rushi said that within her team, they're very good at moving the tickets properly. So when they do any L&D work, they move the tickets they're currently working on back into a dwelling status while they do the L&D work. And we can see that the redo is actually climbing. So we're seeing that go up, which can be seen as a negative. And I know we've talked about the fact that it probably doesn't make as much sense because the L&D tickets are parked up. But the interesting thing for me is that that is still an impact. The fact that where we're doing L&D is an impact, and it is fragmenting people's time. So what I would consider at that point is we need to really be careful where we do L&D. And a lot of the time we have L&D Friday, and everybody does L&D on a Friday. But I think sometimes you need to consider for the team, is that the best thing to do? We might be better doing L&D once we've finished the sprint, once we've actually done the reviews and the retro, a time when we've not got a lot of work actually ongoing on the boards. There might be cleverer times when we can actually do things like that. So it's easy sometimes to fall into the trap and think this is just something we do and it's going to impact us. We should review that though. We should always be aware of it. So I think we had a quick look at redo, and I picked the biggest spike out when I was talking to, this is the biggest spike of redo, and it threw up a really interesting ticket. So this is the ticket, and what this view gives us is it shows us the tickets that have had the most redo, and then it shows us, it maps the statuses they've been through over that period of time. So I've just selected the one ticket, and you can see the journey of this one ticket through implementation, ELAB, UAT, and it just gradually works its way through many, many times through. And Rushi, I don't know, you want to give a bit of an explanation on that one?
Definitely. I would like to take that one because that is something I've seen for the first time in my life. That is a ticket that has story points of 40. So that's the first ticket ever in my life in delivery that I've seen, a 40-pointer ticket. So definitely I would like to talk about it, because what happened with that ticket was really a very good lesson for us, especially in terms of delivery, that we shouldn't be repeating it again. So we had one of a squad member who is a DevOps engineer was in charge of this ticket, and I would say it was a lot on his plate to be able to work on just one single ticket. So this is where I try to understand the squad capacity, wherein one person is burdened with so much of work, and if we don't offer enough support to that person, definitely this is what happens. And also to add on to this one, it's not just about the capacity, it's also about the interruptions you see. So anything that is more urgent than this ticket takes a toll. So this ticket again goes back into the buffer stages, which is parked, and when the incident or any other thing that is critical in the system is being picked up before this ticket. So all you see is this has been parked multiple times, this has been considered for progress multiple times, and why it has happened, we know because we have worked through it. We also know the impact it has had on this data. That's why I'm able to give you a brief context about what's happened. And in order to mitigate that, there's also one more factor that added to this is at Sky Betting and Gaming, we have a really very good benefit of using our L&D, which I haven't seen anywhere else. So what we do is every Fridays we pick up, L&Ds. It is up to the squad how they decide to use their L&D time. But in terms of my squad, we decided that Friday is the day that we pick up so that there would be less disruption if everybody in the squad tried to do L&D on the same day. So because of what we tried to improve in terms of our learning and skill development is what you can see, the green bit here, this is the class of service. So if you see at the start of the year, there are bits and pieces of the L&D that is happening, but ever since we tried to do more about skill development, personal development, team development, and focus more about learning, you see there's a rise in the number of people taking L&D in the squad. And because of this, there's another factor that has impacted the redo. Because people take it on a Friday, any ticket that they are working on goes back into the buffer stage. So doing one thing has again an impact on the other. But again, understanding the context as to why the redo time has increased is because we are putting time on L&D on Fridays. So this is where it's really important to have that conversation and ask why. Anything else you would want to add on to this, Dave?
No, I think the key thing here is the great thing about effort is that we can track the amount of effort that's spent on each of these classes of services. We've got a standard set that we run across most of our teams. And obviously we try and track when certain things are happening. Things like when we've got compliance work coming in and impacting, we can see compliance coming through with some compliance work. We can see weeks of compliance work and then it drops away. So just having that, especially on some teams when they've agreed they're going to try and do customer focused work for a certain percentage of the time, we can see the impact of that going through. So class of service is another one of our metrics that we're not planned on showing it today, but it's set to fit in quite nicely. So I think the only other thing, I know we're getting quite, if there's going to be a few questions, we might be getting a bit short on time, but the last thing that I talked to Rushi about was the story points themselves. So let me just go and have a look at the story point view. So this might look a bit confusing because we've got so much happening here. I'd like to quickly touch on the one ticket that we talked about already. And you can see here, this is that 40-point ticket. And the interesting thing is the history of it. It made me laugh when I saw it. The history of it, so we can see the history of the estimation that's put on it. It goes from 1 point to 3 points to 5 points, 8 points, 13 points, back to 5, 20, 5, 20, and eventually 40 points. It's a little bit of a crazy journey over a year's period. So,
but again, there's one thing to add on is, as and when we know the complexity is increasing, the squad, what they have done is they have improved the estimation on the ticket. So that is something which is commendable, that they have tried to adapt.
Yeah, which is good. So here, again, there's too much we're looking at, so I'm just going to probably pick the last part of this. Let me see if I can actually click on this and select the last few weeks. We can have a look at what's been happening. Here we go. So what we're looking at here is all the tickets in the last 5 weeks. We can see there's a big trend up. And we can see all the 1 point, 2s, 3s, 5s, and 8s. We can see the average effort that's being put into these tickets. Because when people put estimates on something, nobody estimates cycle time. They kind of estimate how much effort they're going to be putting into something. So it's always interesting to see that. The great thing I see here is the average effort between from a 1 pointer steps up to the 2s, steps up again to the 3s, again to the 5s, and then to the 8s. So there's a nice gradual increase spread across the averages of those tickets, which is a great thing to see. And then the other thing we'd use these for is to spot outliers. Is there anything in here? Maybe this 8 pointer, the effort on it was lower than the 5s and some of the 3s. This helps us look at what we can talk about at Part Retro. We can actually pick some of the outliers out. Was it estimated tiny and it ended up being large, or vice versa? We can talk about those and try and learn about them. And I know Rushi's team actually re-estimate some of the work. So they use this and they learn from what's happened and they re-estimate, which is a great thing.
Yeah. So one thing I'd like to add on to this is it's took a really long time for us to understand what is story points, how do we estimate, because we had such a big squad act. So I'd like to iterate that this is a conversation that is ongoing in my squad. It is something that is a part of continuous improvement as to how we can try and improve our estimation so that we can let the business know how accurate our data is. To add to that, as Dave mentioned, you can see a step ladder formation. So what we tried to do differently recently is we have the planning session, and then we have the elaboration session wherein the team points certain tickets. And when they point certain tickets, we just pick up one and try to relatively estimate. Forget about all the story points, forget about all the buckets that you have to put the tickets in. Just make sure you understand this is a piece of ticket that you know you're working on. Understand what it is. Compared to that piece of ticket, where do you think this fits in? Is it more or is it less? Trying to have that relative estimation is really important. Doesn't matter the story points, but actually getting the basics right is really important for the squad. And as you see here, over the period of time, though the trend of story points data has gone down, but if you just pick up the data from here to here, you would see a trend line that is going up. So if you negate what has happened in the past of the capacity of the squad going down, but however, if you see this particular trend line that Davis, the trend line is actually going up. So that's where the difference makes is on the story point ladder, that we are trying to relatively estimate than put them in the bucket. That is one thing. The second thing is, if you notice there are few stars out here in some of the story points, that's what happens when we discuss about what has happened in the last cycle. Do you think that story has taken more efforts? So that is when we try and adapt and repoint, so that, this one, as an example, you see, we have repointed whenever we felt that I think the effort is more on this one, or perhaps the effort is less. So this is what we try and keep iterating in the squad during our planning sessions, elaboration sessions, at any point in time. So it doesn't mean that, having a story point actually make sure that that is the whole story point that continues throughout the journey of the ticket. No, we try and adapt and make sure the data is as accurate and possible whilst it's flowing through the system. So that's where you see all the stars out there is when my squad has repointed, they have identified that it might be more or less than the actual pointed tickets.
There aren't that many stars in there either. I was looking earlier, so I was expecting a lot more re-estimates, but there aren't that many in the last few weeks, which is great. And that's it. It's a continuous learning. That's what we should be doing. We should be learning from what we've already done. And we have to remember that teams are continually evolving. They're made up of people, so it's quite volatile at times. So I think what we're doing here and what Rush is doing with the team, with the .star team, is great. So I'm going to end that there, and we'll drop back to the slide deck. Step through these. I think you're going to finish, Rushi. Right.
Yeah.
Just step down through these.
Technology experimentation. That's all we're trying to do here today. Next one. Yeah, it's taking a while.
Yeah. No. Oh, doesn't want to work. Anyway, carry on.
Yeah. So if you can see this slide, all I want to conclude today is, at times we all get confused on where we are heading to and why we are doing things the way we are doing. It is the best time to look into your data and try to improve and analyze it, because what happens is you should not rely entirely on metrics, but you should use metrics in order to see whether you're reaching your goal or not and try and adapt it. So your goals could be goal A and goal B, but having one metrics could help you reach goal A. But if that metrics tells you that you are not on the right path, maybe that's when you need to diverge. And then again, recheck the metric. And that's when that metric helps you keep on evolving until you reach your plan B or the goal B. So all today I want to tell you is data in itself can be a lot too much, but the real measure of success is in delivering a working software which is fully tested and adds value to your customer. And our aim in SBG for using data is to have progress and not to control. So thank you. Any questions? Any questions from anyone?
Yeah, so the question is around, for the people at home, around if we've noticed any changes through lockdown across the trends. So I've definitely noticed that. So we only started really using the metrics at business level probably when lockdown started, because obviously the leadership team were interested in what the impact of lockdown was going to have when we suddenly moved everybody home. So we started using it then. And there was some trends last year. The reason we go back to 2019 is because if we want to look at year-on-year trends, last year is a bit broken for us. So we sometimes have to go back to 2019. Things like holidays were totally changed in 2020. So people just didn't take holidays when you'd expect them to. So everything changed. So where you'd expect to see number of throughput going down, we didn't see that. We saw it going up. So everything kind of changed, and that's from the business level. Team level?
Yeah, team level, I would say I started in January, so I can't speak about what happened in the squad before that. But at the team level, what we have recently discovered is, because of all the changes happening in the squad, cycle time is something that is volatile, and it doesn't mean that you improve or you kind of help to perform it. But all I would say is, why the cycle time is behaving the way it should, we need to understand that. And if we try and understand that, I don't think cycle time, in itself is of any value unless and until we try and adapt to improve it. So I would say data in itself definitely speaks a lot of story for it. But again, it is for us at the squad level, because what happened, what the question you asked about lockdown is, there might be people who have, loads of personal issues that has happened, and we all agree to it. And that could impact the cycle time. But however, at the same time, if you see the commute time, the people who are putting more hours into the system and trying to work together, that also adds to the cycle time. So averaging it doesn't work, but having conversations with people definitely helps. So yeah. No.
Yeah, we've got more reports. So we just touched on a few other reports there. We've got quite a lot of in-depth reports, and the real power, I think, definitely comes from that understanding effort, where effort's going, and that understanding the workflows and how they're broken down. And we do see quite a lot that we try and improve one part of a workflow, and it just passes problems somewhere else. So we need to try and you've got to manage the entire workflow. Is what you've got to do.
Yeah. And if you have any questions or want to get into detail, please let us know. We can have a chat after.
We'll be about afterwards. Give us a shout.
So we have a question from the audience here who says, hello, John. Thank you for your question. What is your biggest challenge when validating the data?
Data quality is, that's the biggest challenge we have. We've got dashboards that hopefully point people in the right direction. Sometimes getting people to use those dashboards is the hard part. You would think it's quite easy just to go in, have a quick look once a week. I know there's more work to do if you see something that's not quite right, but re-engaging. So at this moment in time, we've actually, into each tribe, we've got data quality champions. They're working with the ADLs and project managers, and we score each tribe. We've got a fun thing going on at the moment where we're actually, each tribe is scored based on all the teams that are active, and we score them. The higher the score, the not so good, I don't want to say bad, the not so good their data quality is for the teams. So we're trying to, each tribe is trying to compete against the other ones to try and get to be the best at data quality, and the data quality champions are driving that. So we kind of tried to make it a bit of a fun game, but hopefully it's driving the right behaviours and getting that data quality right.
Yeah, I think I would like to add on to that as well. At the team level, the biggest challenge would be when people do not understand why we are doing, why we are having those tickets on the board, why we are tracking stuff, and things like these. So they could be a bit more wherein you might need to add more efforts in helping them understand the purpose of why we are actually tracking, because most people feel that when you move on to the area of tracking, it becomes like, something that is not too great. It is perceived as very negative, and also to add on with all the admin work that you have to do. But however, if you try and do it regularly, it becomes less of an admin and more about, it is a part and parcel, like how we do our daily stand-ups. It is a part of a routine. So the data quality report that Dave has mentioned is something that I look every morning just before the stand-up, so that I can ask questions in the stand-up if I need to. So it is something that we validate every day, every week, and every month with relevant set of people. So we try and make sure the quality of our data is better before we actually rely on the data.
And the thing is, now we're being tracked obviously at divisional level with Flutter. I may come asking awkward questions about why something's happened. So the idea is that if the ADLs and project managers are keeping on top of the data quality week in and week out, if somebody comes once a month and asks an awkward question, they've already spotted a trend or something happening. So they've already got the answer for it. So it's in their interest really to be on top of data quality. And especially when people come to me, a common question I get is, I'd like to understand the impact of support on the team. So the team might not only be developing the products, they may also be supporting products or doing various support. And if they're not moving those tickets accurately, and we're getting massive amounts of effort going on support tickets, when in reality they're only a few minutes or an hour, then I can't help them, unfortunately. And what they have to do then, they have to go away for 4 or 5 weeks, improve data quality, and then we can have a look once they've done it. So just by keeping on top of it, it means if they've got an issue, we can review it together and we can come up with a solution, or at least try and understand what the problem is.
Good. Any other questions?
So the question is, do we have anything? You want to go again?
Yeah.
We should
have anything specific on velocity, like more in-depth analysis, I suppose?
Yeah, so that's kind of a little bit more complex than the stuff we've already been looking at. Let me have a look. This is in the project mapper. So this is, let me go full screen just to give you an idea of this. So when we're looking at velocity for the team, a common mistake teams make is they assume they've got one velocity, and they track that. They look at a daily or a weekly velocity. But the truth is that there's more than one velocity within a team. What this report does, it allows us for each team in the business or for each tribe to pull together what's happened over a rolling set of time. You can see I set this to 4 weeks. So it's showing me over the last 4 weeks where this team's been completing story points. And it's showing me the blue is what's currently ongoing on their board as of first thing this morning. So the top one is where they're putting most of their, I'm going to call it point effort. I know it's not effort, but it's point effort. So we can see that the operational tasks is where they're putting most of their effort at this moment in time and have been for the last 4 weeks. Then they've got some monkey bots, that's support for us in SB&G, so that's their support work. And then we've got, this is one of their initiatives. So what we can do here, I can see that this team over the last 4 rolling weeks has been doing 9 points a day. They've been achieving 9 points a day. But if the ADL on this team, Grant, on rep in there, if he wants to understand, if somebody comes and asks how long it'll take to deliver a piece of initiative work, then that 9 points a day, if he uses 9 points a day, then he's going to tell them a date that he's never ever going to hit. Because the reality is, out of all these large initiatives we're tracking against, the only one in here that is actually an initiative is this one. If I select that one, we'll see that that figure changes. So out of 9 points a day, they're actually putting 1.5 points a day towards initiative work. So any kind of calculation he wants to do for how long something will take, if he's got a rough estimate for the full size of it, he needs to divide that out by 1.5. The rest of that 9 points is going on operational work, support work. And what we need to do then is we need to try and understand from this point, we might want to say, well, we want to start reducing some of the actual support work. If we want to actually get more happening here, we might need to reduce some of the other work that's happening. But understanding the streams of work going through as they sit under the initiatives is quite a key thing for us. And being able to do that, we can understand that at tribe level, if there are any major initiatives that are being worked on. We can see which teams are putting how much effort toward, well, point effort towards the initiatives. So that's what drives this. This is a way we understand velocity within it. We've got other ones as well where we can actually focus the time. We can look at this daily points and then look at class of service and filter it by that. So we can see if they're doing customer related work or BAU. So we've got multiple ways of doing it, but a lot of the time is to understand that just because a team can do a number of points in a day, it doesn't mean that all those are focused on the same things. You have to understand where those are focused and how they're changing over time. So again, we can look back a year. We can look back, or if I look back 8 weeks, this may change. We may actually see a different thing come to the top. Although if it's so a monkey bot, so over the 8-week period, the support work has been the greatest hit to them. But now there's not much actually progressing. So then football, you can see they've probably ramped down the initiative quite recently, apart from a little spike here. So being able to interact and look at that data like this really helps us understand things like velocity.
Cool. We have a question on Zoom here from Alex. How do you prioritize what to focus on in individual squads? It could be easy to find yourself in analysis paralysis with so many data items to choose from. Well, definitely it is, especially from the delivery perspective. We are quite lucky to have the autonomy to choose what works best for us as ADLs. So you might be finding tons and tons of data and all the metrics that Dave has actually set up for all the SBG as an organization. But I would say it is up to the ADL to choose what works best for the team. And it's not just for the ADL, but have the conversation in the team and also help the team decide what they want to track, what they want to kind of analyze over a period of time. Because it's not just the ADL who is in charge of, the performance or the delivery, it's the whole team. The product owner, they drive the value. The squad engineers and testers and everybody working in the team, they drive the solution. And ADL just helps to support all of these roles. So I feel there are tons of data points. Find what works best for your team. Hope I've answered that well.
I think one of the things here, we're looking at the year to date, and it's very rare, I think, that we'd be looking at year to date for most of the teams. Most teams will be concentrating probably on the last 2 or 3 weeks. And a lot of the time for me, what I'd be looking for as an ADL are those interesting tickets, the ones that can make a difference. It's very rare you find one piece of data that you can bring in and fix within a team, and it makes that team 100% better. But what you find is it's making small changes over time. They make the big difference once you add it up over a year. So for me, I'd probably be looking back over the last couple of weeks. Have we got any tickets that weren't estimated very well? Or have we got any tickets that look like they've cycled for a long period of time? Take 2 or 3 of those into retro and talk about them, and then learn from them. And the answer might be there's nothing we can do about that. And if that's the answer, fine. But if there is something you can do, you can change your process, then have a go. See if the trends start to change. That's the key thing here. We're very lucky that leadership allow us to pick the metrics we need to work on. We've got a lot of them in there, but they all answer slightly different questions, and it can be a little bit confusing at times, but the more you start using them and digging in, hopefully you can find the answers. I think we're getting a little bit of a wrap-up sign coming in here. 2 minutes.
Yeah, so we have one last question. Maybe we can answer that from Miranda. Thank you, Miranda, for this question. Is there ever a time when you decide that certain dashboards are no longer useful, and what actions would you take? Well, definitely. Let's both answer this, one from the ADL perspective, that is at the team focus, and one from the business focus. So I would say there are loads of dashboard at times which we feel may not be useful at one particular point in time. Say, for example, for our squad, which is dealing with 3 work streams. So if we kind of stick on to what's the velocity of the squad at the end of the cycle, that actually makes no sense for us as a squad, because there are different sets of people working on different things. But however, if we try to analyze a particular initiative, have a burn-up chart around it, or any other data set wherein we are able to make any informed decisions for that particular initiative, that's when we feel that data might be useful over the others. So it is up to us again to decide as a squad what fits in best for us so that we can help and deliver. But at the business perspective, what do you think, Dave?
It's interesting. I get people contact me all the time. I might think one of the, I've got metrics. I know exactly which of these reports are viewed and how often they're used. And I see some of them get very seldom used. And I'll think to myself, if it's no use, we could just take it out and save the data that's coming in for it. But then what will happen is somebody will contact me and say, I've got a real problem. I need to understand this. And then that one report is a great way of actually looking at it. So there's no negativity to having them in. A lot of these, we can drive to specific reports on these just by selecting and picking up a more in-depth deep dive into what the data is below it. There's no real, the idea here is that people use the metrics that they want to use. And a lot of the idea is that they're all there for a reason. Some might have subtle differences, but I'm still finding that most of them are being used. Even they might only be used once a month, but they still add quite a lot of value to the people that are using them. So at this moment in time, we've stopped building metrics at the moment. The only time we'll build new ones, one, we want to get everybody using these, understanding these. The only time we'll build new ones is if there's a real value and we see across the entire business a real value. But at the moment, we're on a push to get data quality right and get people using the reports that already exist.
Cool. I hope we have answered that question, Miranda. We have no more questions on Zoom.
I think that's about right.
Are we happy to wrap up? Yeah? Okay, cool. Thank you so much for attending today's talk, and hope we have added some value to your thoughts and conversations out here, and by sharing our experiences. So thank you from the bottom of our heart.
Thank you.